Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be on live on Facebook. Hi, ladies and gentlemen, welcome and thank you so much for being here with us at GDM Metropolis Productions, and I am live streaming live to you from the lovely island of Singapore, and we are 1 degree north of the equator here in the tropical island, and we are live broadcasting to you from America and Singapore, and we've got Miss Annette Rittenberger. And before she comes on, you know what? I am going to share her with the rest of the metaverse on Facebook. Wow, you can't believe it, ladies and gentlemen. We are on live on Facebook also. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. If you are there, okay, you can join me in my group. Okay, Humanity in Connection. We are there live on Facebook and we are live on YouTube. And it is the 10th of November. We're coming to the end of the month. How are you, Annette?
Good, thank you. How are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, how amazing, right? You are broadcasting from America. And tell us where you are right now.
I'm in Central Texas.
Wow. I mean, that's where George Bush comes from, right?
Yes, Houston. He comes from Houston. I'm not in Houston. I'm in Killeen, which is about 2.5 hours away from Houston, but still close enough.
Yeah. And you know, Annette, Singapore is a little island. If you drive from the west of the island to the east, to the very end of both sides, it takes only 1.5 hours. Can you imagine? So this is as small an island. Now, I just want to be sure to be clear to all the international viewers, wherever you are, live or not, Singapore is not China. We are an independent, sovereign country, sovereign state with our own government, and we import our laws from the mercantile law and the law from Britain, of course, from the UK, because we were a colony of UK, and the founder is Sir Stamford Raffles. And you know, the name Singapore stands for Singapura, which means Lion City. And therefore, we have a symbol of the lion. And that's a little bit of a geography for you, Annette. How are you doing, Annette? How is the pandemic situation in America right now?
Well, I just learned something new because I did not know Singapore meant that. So thank you. And it's getting better, I think. So still the mask is mandated in certain areas. But you know, new vaccines coming and all kinds of things. So it's okay. It's okay.
Okay, great. I mean, I read that you know, some of these medical experts were saying on air in US that America can foresee that come January 2022, they can declare that the pandemic is over. So thank you to the country that's working so hard. And of course, a lot of people suffered from it. And also, you know, Annette, I just want to thank you so much for doing this show, which is your show, the Masterclass Women's Leadership for Today, the Annette Rittenberger Show. And today we're going to talk about women at the workforce, right? How do you manage the challenges of life and family, and where do you stand? Where do your needs stand in the middle of all the crazy world that you're trying to manage? So without further ado, we're going to come in to your show. And I just want to thank you for being such a good sport for the past couple of episodes. And, you know, we are drawing close to the second final episode of your show. And then after that, we're going to talk about a little bit about your book. And tell us about you and your family and your career. The first question: what were the biggest challenges in balancing work-life? I mean, this work-life balance, if there is such a term, if it even exists, tell us, Annette.
That is true. How do you do it? So in the beginning, how did I balance it? I was trying to learn how to do it all, how to be a mom, how to be a spouse,
Yeah.
and then how to be a leader. And that was very challenging. But you know, I just had to make priorities and say that when it comes to the kids' school activities, I had to really try and be there because we get so focused on trying to be the best at work. So when do we draw the line, and unless we voice our concerns, um, our superiors won't know. So we really have to say, look, my daughter or my son has a certain school activity this day. Is it okay if I leave early? I'll come in earlier. I'll stay late the next day. But you have to, give the options and voice it, because they don't know what they don't know. And not to say that you're always going to get your way, because there are certain bosses out there who says, I'm sorry, we need you, or whatever the case is. So I had to do split operations. I had to tell my husband, well, maybe you could take off early.
Split operation.
Yes. One of us needs to try and be there, and we always try to make that happen. So there were cases where it couldn't happen, and we just communicated that with the children and said, we can't be there, but we promise to try to the next time. But as long as you talk to them and not make it seem like it's their fault or that you don't care, we just have to talk it through. And I think that's one of the most important things. It's just talking it through and making sure that everyone is aware that we're really trying.
Yeah, and I'd like to zoom in a little bit about your family management, because a woman, we have talked about in your first episode that you had your first child in Germany away from home, and you had to kind of like work through those moving parts, right? Things are just moving. The needs are moving, family is moving, and then your career is fast moving upwards. Tell us, like, within this growing stage of your children in their lives till now, I see them on Facebook that they're in college. What are the three most toughest, most difficult challenge that you had to deal with in terms of dealing with their growing up specifically?
Not always being able to be there. There was certain times,
any certain events, like I think in America there's the PTA or something. Is there a particular couple of events you think kind of stuck out that you had to manage?
A sporting event. My kids played sports, my daughter in particular, and they traveled a lot. They traveled to different locations, and I couldn't always be at every single one of them. I had to stay back to take care of my son, or the distance was just way too far for us to go. And so that always made me feel guilty. I wasn't always able to be at every game. There were certain games where I did travel an hour or 2 hours to be there, but I couldn't be at all the one, and I felt really bad. I just couldn't, just sometimes you just have to say, okay, I can't be at this one. I need to take care of your brother. And, he has another event. And so it's like, we can't split, and we couldn't always be there. So yeah, those were my biggest regrets, is missing those.
Yeah. And how long this phase lasted?
Oh, a couple years, for sure, because as they, advanced in grade, they advanced in their position in the sport. And then it was just it just became more important. And I just I didn't want to miss those first times where they made a touchdown, they made a goal, or they made in basketball. I felt bad that I couldn't be there when they won their game. And
wow,
it's hard.
Yeah. Was there a time whereby you felt bad, right? That being a mom, you couldn't see them through a particular highlight of their lives. How did you manage yourself, and how did you yeah, how did you manage within yourself? And then, how do you make sure that you don't have this guilt, and also to talk through to the children so they don't have any kind of feeling that, okay, mom missed out on me, and they have regrets?
I just, I try to, I don't want to say relieve the guilt, but I try to make it to where I couldn't be so hard on myself, because the kids knew, and they would say, it's okay, mom, and we would talk
Wow.
about it. And I would just try to spend extra time with them on the weekends, just doing whatever, just going out to eat or pizza or whatever the case is. I just felt like it was really important to try to make up the time that I lost. So I tried to make up for that on the weekends or whatever, whatever we
Hmm.
wanted to do. So the little things like pizza Fridays or the
Wow.
movies,
Pizza Friday.
those little things, they
Yeah.
matter. And that's what I tried
Hmm.
to do. Mhm.
Is there a particular tip you would like to share? Like you're saying, like Pizza Fridays. Is there
Mhm.
something like that any particular family should adopt a formula?
I've seen a lot of my friends, and I really try to do that. Is at least one weekend or pick a Friday or Saturday night. That's when everybody comes together. That no matter what, just you need to be a family, eat at the dinner table or eat on the couch, whatever the case is, try to make it a family event. And I think
Hmm.
that's one of the most important things, because our lives get so busy during the week, right? So
Yeah.
if you don't make that a priority, or make it a day, then you're going to forget, and the time's just going to go by fast. So at least try to have one day where nothing else is going to conflict, because you are spending that with your family.
Yeah. And your family includes your puppy, right?
Yes, she has to say something all the time. Oh my
Yeah, I
gosh.
noticed you've got two lovely puppies there. Okay, now you have to manage like your mind too, right? Because being a career woman yourself, I mean, it's more than a career. It's your life. You're talking about signing your life on the dot, being in the military. It's not like even a corporate job we're talking about, right? If it needs you to go, you have to go, right? How does it balance it? How do you balance it in your mind? For example, okay, I need to talk to my kids over dinner, and this time is the family time. I need to get things out of my mind. How do you do that? So often it's like we are bogged down by certain pressures of work, the urgency, the deadline, the decisions. How do you do that?
So when it came to with every move that we had to make, it was like every 3 years, or one to every 3 years. Every move that we made was always a family discussion. So we would talk about okay, these are our choices. Where would you like to go? And make it a family event on the decision we had to make, because it involves them too. And that was really difficult, because you're uprooting your family again to go somewhere new without their friends and all that. So we always had to try to have open communication on how they felt about it, and be honest and say, mommy's sad too. This isn't easy, but this is something that we have to do, and it's going to be okay. Look at all these new things. And we would have the research the place, and just try to
Mm,
make it a family thing. On this is a decision for
mm,
all of us. I'm not just saying, hey, we're moving here and you have no choice about it.
yeah.
We don't always have that choice, but how can we make this a better move by talking about it? Just making it to where it's not dreadful, that it's actually a good thing, and that God always has a plan. And
Yeah,
so that's what
yeah.
we had to do.
And I'm going to ask you a tough question as a mother. Um, do you feel that you have forced them to grow up faster than other kids in that sense?
Yes, for
And how do you
sure.
feel about that?
I didn't like it. It made me sad when we moved to Kansas.
Yeah.
They were 7 and no, they were 8, 9, and
Yeah.
11.
Yeah.
And they had to walk to school by themselves. And my
Yeah.
daughter got her first
Wow.
phone, and I couldn't be there to walk them to school or even pick them up because I was in school myself. And that was
Yeah.
hard for me
Wow.
to handle because it was a new place. And of course, we want our kids to be safe. And talking to the neighbors, can you make sure my kids get there? It's just so many things that stressed me out a lot.
Yeah.
But that was really hard because I had to
Yeah.
make her learn. What do we call them? When I was growing up, we were called latchkey kids because
Yes.
yeah.
With the
So
keys. They come home with
yeah,
an empty
yeah.
house. I
So
know. I know how I felt because I was like one
yeah,
of them.
yeah. So I had to grow
I
up
felt
fast.
lonely. Yeah.
Exactly. And so my kids had to do the same thing. And it
Yeah.
was just, it was hard. That was
Yeah.
really, I didn't like forcing them, having to force them to grow up fast,
Yeah.
but that was the life of the military. Like you just had
Yeah.
to,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that makes the military family so much more enduring to the rest of the people because they have made sacrifices, not only them, but their children, right? So, ladies and gentlemen, listen up, the children, the military children, I think a lot of support you have from these kids. Can you imagine that they are the ones telling you, mommy is okay?
Yeah.
Oh my
It
God, it's like, ah.
that really was such a it really touches you, when
Yeah,
your own kids, they're telling you that it's okay. And that's
wow.
hard. Yeah, that's really
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah. So how does it further bond the family now? And also, does it mean that military children, because they're looking up to their parents, like you and your husband in the military, does it make them much more have this sense of self-worthiness, sense of self-esteem, sense of self-pride, sense of self-worthiness, and not go fall to the side way, like going on drugs and being with the wrong people? Does it make it actually better for them, you think?
So I will be honest. So it did make our family strong, but I will tell you that there were challenges with
Mm,
trying to adapt,
mm,
and and some depression, that comes with it. And
wow.
not a lot of people see that. They think that our kids are so resilient and so
Yeah.
strong. And yes, they are, but there's challenges too behind all that because of all the moves they had to make, because of all the starting over and the feeling lonely and trying to make new friends. Those are
Coping
those
with
are
it.
yeah, those are real struggles that not a lot of people see. And
Wow.
so
Salute to
all
the
the,
children.
yeah, for no, absolutely. And we forget to talk about that, but
Yeah.
it's real. And so
Yeah.
now, the kids are 18 and 21, and they are much stronger, but it's still not easy because they were so used to this life. And then when my daughter went off to college, it was like, oh my gosh, I'm by myself. I'm on my own. What do I do? And so there's a lot of
Yeah.
learning experiences.
Yeah. And can you explain, like, to the rest of us, the civilian world, the rest of us, either Americans or not Americans, military families like yourself, you are a family with a pair of parents, you and your husband in military. There are times when you have to be away, and there are times where your husband have to be away, right? Could you describe at least like two occasions whereby one of you had to be away or two of you had to be away? And these kids, how did they cope with that?
Yes, the first time that we were both away at the same time was when we deployed in 2005 to 2006. I left
Wow.
first. I left 6 months before he did, and then he left,
Mm,
and then we were both
yeah.
gone at the same time. And my
Wow.
kids were 4 and 6.
Wow.
So that was hard. They're young, and both of us are gone, and the only way to talk to us is by phone,
Mm,
when it was possible, and it wasn't always possible. So they lived with my mom, and that was that was hard. That
yeah.
was really hard. And then, later on, even as I got older, we still lived apart. My husband had to go to Korea for a year. or he had to deploy. And even now, present time, my husband lives in Missouri and I live in Texas.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, there's still sacrifices that are made even
as
even now.
As they're grown. Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
I think it's so important to kind of like shine the light. You're talking about people who do not come to the forefront. They're not in the headlines, right? I mean, the headlines are the newsmakers, right? The politicians. And when the news breaks, it's always the big news. And the ordinary people like yourselves, even though you are the military, but you represent this cohort of the military family. And also within the family, there's a microcosm of people who made sacrifices for the world, like your children and your mom, right? Have you ever like sat down and talked to them, like how they felt, like a sit down session, like, you know, how they felt when you were away, the kind of reconciliation that they have to make, like, oh, my parents are away again. Did you ever had that kind of sit down with your mom and with the children and like really hear from them what they say?
Yes, actually, just a few years ago, my daughter, she expressed how she felt growing up, and it was so it was not heartbreaking. It was just so, or maybe some heartwarming too, because she said that she understood, and that she knew why we did what we did. And so that was really eye-opening, because I didn't know, we just make the kids move and that's it. But for her to be at that stage in her life where she was able to finally say, no, I understood, Mom. And it was okay. We figured it out. And I was like, oh my God.
Oh my God. And I think your story have to be told. Mm-hmm. And their story have to be told through their eyes. Mm-hmm. Because so often it's just like in the pandemic, right? We forgot that the world is seen differently from their eyes. Like if they're toddlers, they're of this height. If you go down that level, can you imagine that level of the height that they go? You squat down and you look at the world actually looks different from that perspective. I mean, physically. So their world looks different mentally, dealing with things. And I think it's so important to talk to children and to listen to them, even at a very young, tender age, Annette.
No, you're right. We needed to learn how to not talk to our kids like they were just babies.
Yeah.
We're so used to talking to them like that, but in this type of lifestyle, I think now just in this society, in this generation, I think it's so important to really talk, because there's so many things going on around us that we can't always be in control of. And so it's up to us to tell our children, okay, this is the real life. This is how, we deal with it. Well, how would you deal with it? And, I've seen, for example, there are quite a few military kids out there who have written books. They've written their own books to talk about their life. And it's like, oh, we forget. It's so amazing to see it through their eyes, because yes, we forget about the children because we're so busy with our life. We're trying to be a good parent, but how we really talk to them about their feelings. When are we going to teach our kids to use their voice?
And Annette, I know your puppies are showing love to you. Hi. No, great. It's great, because that's where we are doing. You're broadcasting from your home, right? Yes. In Texas, right? And I'm in Singapore, right here. So that's authenticity, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, I remember, just to share with you, Annette, I remember when I started my global pandemic series in 2020 and early part of 2021, I had a caller. I had someone actually wrote into me to say that he would like to be on the podcast. And this is like I rarely have that. I mean, I have someone from Australia, a data scientist. I mean, mature individuals, and this was I think a 19-year-old student. I mean, mature adult too, young adult, and he came onto the podcast, telling me that he was afraid of the pandemic, of the COVID-19, and he never talked to anyone. I mean, that's sad. And that's in the height of the pandemic. I said, don't your parents talk to you about it? She said, no, nobody talks about it. I say, what about your classmates? And they're having this online school, right? In the school. And they kind of like text to each other. They say, yeah, my friends are afraid. A lot of this missed messages from young people, right? Talking among themselves or not even talking. And they're kind of like, it breeds that mental health thing, because you're not being reached out to, right? I mean, even adults like us, we don't even reach out to people. Can you imagine the kids? So I think, like, for example, even during the pandemic times, and he called me 3 times. Once he was on the show, and a second time, a couple of weeks later, he called on the show, because he had no one to talk about the pandemic. And I was doing a show on pandemic. So I said, why don't you talk to your parents, right? No, I said, no, they're not going to talk about it. They don't talk about it. We don't talk about it. But it kind of juxtaposed in real life, right? A lot of us forget that young people or children or growing adults, we forget that they have their own heart, the voice from the heart, right? And yes. And I hear your children, Annette, is there anything you would like to shout out to them now?
Oh my gosh. I have tried to really emphasize how proud I am of them for just growing up to be the people that they are, because it's been so hard. So with the decisions that they've made, always, sometimes they're not the best, but they came out of it and they learned from it and they're growing from it. Yeah. And so that's all we can really hope for and be proud of, is that I know I've done a lot of that. It's just say, I'm so proud of how you are now, because it could have been so much different, it doesn't always go this way.
And that's why your show is so important, and I hope that the show can go on for another season sometime down the line, because you are a reflection of quite a few or even a lot of military families, and giving them the light and giving them the voice, because not many people are podcasters, to be honest, right? And not many people make it to the headlines. And usually if we make it to the headlines, they're negative stories, right? So I think our job as podcasters are so important, Annette, to bring out people's life stories in the form of a conversation like what we're doing now, because we're giving light. And you are not only representing you're representing your family and your children, and letting me know, wow, there are these kids, because we forget that there are families, right? Mm-hmm. We forget that if you are being sent to Iraq, if you are being sent to Vietnam, you are being sent to the warships in South China Sea, for example, we forget that there are people behind you. And we're not even talking about the logistical support of the whole military. We're talking about everyday people. Mm-hmm. And we forgot these everyday people, that they're actually the heroes of our time. And that makes, again, a shout out to the upcoming event, the International Summit of Humanity. People who, I think, ordinary people, they forget that their lives make a difference. Mm-hmm. I mean, for example, Annette, you are there being sent out, or your husband is being sent. You are there on a mission because you need to train the people, you need to be part of an operation, or you need to be out of the country for a bigger purpose, and your children are the ones supporting, they are your logistical support. Yes. And I think a lot of people forget that. And I think we forget to thank children. We forget to thank your mom, the other logistical support, right? The community, the neighbors, right? So I think this is a time at the end of the year, Annette, even for a show like this for yourself, to give thanks and to reflect about all these people that we forget that they do make sacrifices for the community when they don't feel anything about it. They didn't even know.
Right.
Annette.
You're so right. We do. We need to give thanks for the background, the people that no one sees.
The logistical support from the families.
Yes.
And they tell you, Mom, we're here. We're here whenever we need you, because we're not going anywhere. You can come back to us and you can cry to us.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, I mean, you think about that. That gives you the military, that gives you the pillar to know that, like what you say, you can't be afraid, you can't be scared because you got children at home. They're waiting for you. They become your pillar of strength, Annette.
They do. We couldn't have done this without their support. It could have been worse.
Yeah. I've got a couple more questions before you go to a part two. I'd like to find out yourself, what is the most fulfilling aspect, you as a woman who has made it through to now, pushing the envelope, pushing that invisible glass wall, the invisible glass ceiling. What's the most fulfilling things in you right now that you can share with the world so that we can celebrate with you?
I think at this point in my life right now, with all the struggles that I've been through and all the challenges, I think using my voice is a huge deal for me, because growing up, we didn't really have that option, just the way our family was. And, growing up through, high school and the military, I didn't know how to use that. And so now I'm using it, and I'm using it as much as I can. And that's a big deal to me.
All right. One final question. How do you manage long distance relationship, which is like so frequent in your 20-year, how many years have you been married?
Oh, 23.
23. Yay. 23. The golden jubilee, right? So tell us like, how do you manage that? You've got the hills and the valleys of life, and likewise you've got the hills and the valleys of a relationship, which is in against the backdrop of what's happening around in your world of the career and your family, right? You are in this relationship that, for a woman, relationship to a woman, even to a man, it's a big part of our lives. That's why we are married, right? Tell us, how did you go through that peaks and the valleys?
Oh, it was a hard road, but I think the most important thing, especially when we live like this, is communication. And with FaceTime and all the technology that we have, I think that's been a great asset, because we can, he could see the kids, or you could see the dogs, whatever the case is. We have that technology to have that communication to make it feel like he's still part of the family, and I think that's important.
I would like to thank you so much, Annette. Is there anything you would like to draw your final 30 seconds in this Annette Wittenberger show in the third episode before we go to the other part?
I think one of the biggest things that we forget is that anything is possible as long as we remember who we are and where we came from. Keep going.
Thank you so much, Annette. I would like everyone right now to watch a trailer before we go to the second part of the interview. And definitely, this is something that everyone should be looking out for before we come back to Annette again. Hi, Annette. We are back. So that is the whole season, which I'm going to share with you and with the rest of the world. Much more exciting things. Annette, you know, a podcast TV is almost like Netflix. You can always watch. They always roll out new shows, and you can always watch the old shows. I mean, that's why I think the podcast world is such an exciting space we're in. Annette, we'd like to talk about your book. You are an author. Could you tell us your book, A Wild Ride Called Life, the meaning of the book, the objective of the book, and then the contents of the book? And what do you hope to achieve out of that?
Yes. So actually the book is called, I have it right here. It's called The Wall Between Two Lives. And it is a true story of finding purpose. And so it's a memoir. It does talk about my life starting at the age of 6 up until just this year, about the struggles and the hardships and just all those things. My purpose is my mission is to really give people hope through whatever challenges that they're going through in life. I went through a lot of stuff that I don't know how I survived from. But I'm here and I made it. And I wanted to show that to people that they can also make it through whatever it is. And so that's really my mission with the book. It was a very difficult one to write. But I can share also that I made it into an audiobook. So that will be available by next week. And I narrated it myself. And that was hard too. But I want to reach as many people as possible to give them purpose in life.
Yeah. And you talked about it's very difficult. Annette, I wrote a book in memory of my mother, a Candle in the Wind, Dreams of a Daughter, that actually documents my real dreams. It's really, really tough. She passed off when it was a very difficult time. I was in France, but I came back, I flew back. I was with her for the last couple of weeks. In between, I was back in Singapore. It was really, really tough writing the book because it's real. You know, it's about the dreams, it's about the interaction I have in the dream. It's like an extension and also the memory that I had before. It's almost like real, right? Wow. And sometimes I wonder this life that I'm in right now in this virtual world is not. Maybe the dream is real. But, you know, it's so hard for me to even read the book right now. I can't even touch, I can't even flip it. I can't do that. So tell us, Annette, writing the book, you said it's so difficult, right? Talked about writing the book first, then we talk about the audio, the reliving the book. Now tell us about a writer's journey.
Yes, so it did take me about a year to write it, and I was conflicted on whether I wanted to publish it myself or I wanted it to be published by a publishing company. And I often second guess myself on if I really wanted to share this with the world. You know, there's some parts in there that my family didn't know about. Yeah. And that was hard because I almost wanted to ask their permission. Is it okay for me to use your name or to have you a part of this, because it is going to be out there? Yeah. Yeah. And I wanted to make sure that this is in no way it's no way for me to, how do I say it? It was not my intent to bring any kind of negativity, shine any kind of negativity on my life, on how my parents raised me. But I did want to point out that these were some of the things that I hid for so long that led to self-destruction, and I had to come out of that. And so I knew that for many of us, it's hard to talk about that part of our life, you know, but that's who made us who we are. And that's how we have become stronger from it. So it was very difficult. As many times as I kept writing and going back with the editor on every paragraph, every sentence. I never, when it was finally printed, I did not go back and reread it.
Yes, I know.
Same
here, exactly. I know I'm just going to shut it, full stop, and that's it. I'm not even going to touch it. I'm not going to flip it. And when it's delivered to me, it stays there at the shelf.
Yes.
And I signed it and I gave it away as an author, but I know exactly how you feel because you're reliving it. Now tell me, now you're reliving it, right? Because you had to read the book. Tell me the struggles that go through and how difficult it is, and tell us some of these important highlights.
Yes. Reading it out loud and hearing myself, that was very difficult. There were times where I had to stop because it was like, oh my gosh, I haven't read that sentence. Right? I haven't read this sentence in over a year. So to read it again, but again, I did it because I wanted to read it myself because it's, I think it's just more powerful that way than having, they can't have the same feeling, but just again, to, I think more for myself, I think really like I could do it. I did it. And I want people to feel it, And so, yes, I literally just finished recording it last week. So, that was, it's not easy. So it's not easy, but it's possible. So, I don't want people to think, oh, I could do that in my house. You can, and there's certain ways to do it. It's just, there's just challenges but like I said before, anything is possible, as long as you have that support system and you remember why you're doing it. Why are you really doing it and who you want to help?
Tell us about one or two of the highlights that you think that you could share with us, and also a shout out to potential buyers and people should go to. Can you get that at Amazon.com?
You can. You can get it on my website as well.
Yeah. Could you tell us a couple of highlights that you could share?
Yes. So there were certain times in my life where I didn't want to live. That was very difficult to come to the realization that was part of my life. And for some reason, somehow, God, he kept showing me a different way and kept telling me, no, it's not time. And so that was very powerful for me because I really was in that point in my life where I felt like a complete failure and I didn't deserve to be here.
Yeah, I mean, I think with that little clip that you shared, I think it's a very powerful book, A Wild Ride Called Life. Now tell us, because your website, your book, and your trademark, I noticed you've trademarked it. Tell us about this A Wild Ride Called Life.
I had no idea what I was going to do with this blog that I started, and the name came from, I don't even know where. It was like all of a sudden this name came to me and I said, that's what I'm going to use, because I think everybody can resonate with it at some point in their life. And so I kept it and I said, well, I'm going to do something with this and I'm going to expand it and share it with the world. And so that's what I did. And I think anything that we do is some kind of wild ride. So so that it
resonates with a lot of people, right?
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be military, and that's what I wanted. It doesn't have to be females, it's for everyone, my own kids. So that's what I wanted to do with it. So now I'm just trying to continue to share it with the world so that we can all be a part of it, the journey together, and help each other through all these difficult things that no one talks about.
Yeah. What are the plans you have around, just pushing out your book?
Well, Of
I do
course,
understand. Yeah, I do understand you have a very strong advocacy for mental health too, right? Does it tie in with your book?
yes,
Tell us
absolutely.
about that.
So in the book, in the back of the book, you'll see there is a short workbook that
Wow.
coincides with the chapters to really make you think about those certain instances in my life, but how would it would apply to you? And so that's what I wanted
Wow.
people to do, is not just to read it, but to really think about it and how could it help you in your current situation. So with that, I am going to write a second one. I am going
Wow.
to publish a larger scaled workbook. And so that's my goal, for people to have a place to write down their thoughts, whether you journal or not, or whether you write or not. Sometimes it's helpful to look at something and make you think
Workbook.
about it.
That's powerful. I've never thought about a workbook. Maybe when I was young and I was like jotting down, but I think you're right. Adults need to go through certain kind of a structured thought to kind of like clear the clutter in their mind. And also sometimes we're just so overwhelmed because like everything is coming to your face, right? How
Yes.
does a workbook help the current book that you have kind of like, you know, make all these like, very random pieces become a structure, make it to bring clarity to all these kind of randomness. How does it work, Annette?
Yeah, I think we're so used to being on our phone and writing things on our phone, but it's completely different when you actually write it down on
Mm,
pen to paper. And I
mm,
think we forget about that. I know I
yeah,
forget about it a lot.
yeah,
So that's why I wanted to
mm,
bring back that option to actually sit down and write
yeah.
it. You can write it from the
I
couch,
see.
whatever the case is, but really think
Wow.
about different things in your life, because we're so busy with our life that we ever stop and really think about things. I know that I've tried to be more grateful every day.
Yeah.
Little things like having money to be able to pay for gas. We don't, we're
Yes.
because we're so used to just doing
Yes.
it. But have we ever
We're
really, yeah,
exactly. We
have
just
we,
we exactly because we just take every breath for granted, right?
yes, yes. And so when I'm able to
Wow.
do something, I'll sit in my car and say, thank you for letting me have the ability to do this, because tomorrow everything could go away. So
Yes.
I have to remind myself. I really do, because I forget. And I think that it's important to have something to give you that reminder, rather than always being on your phone. I'm guilty of it. I'm always on my phone. So I need something else to help me keep that
Wow.
reminder. So I think, I'm doing it for myself, but for other people who may feel like they need it too.
Yeah, that's power there, right there. And then you are trying to empower people with that.
I am. I wish I would have had that growing up.
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
so
yeah,
I, I'm 46 now, and I'm saying, it's not too late. I could do it, and I'm going to
yeah,
do it. I want to do this. So I have to stop letting little roadblocks get in the way and just say,
yeah.
why, what's stopping me? So yeah, no, let's do it.
Wow. Yeah, so that's the book, A Wild Ride Called Life, with your own, it's like a memoir. And
Yes.
also it has a bonus at the back in the form of a free workbook for you to go through your mind to declutter or to give structure in all this madness of the world. I mean,
Yes.
that's a great book, Annette. I mean, go to your website,
Yes.
definitely, and go to Amazon. A couple of questions before we say goodbye. Um, do you plan to like, do a kind of like events around the book?
Yes, absolutely. So I did one in Virginia.
Mm,
I did one here in Texas, but I want to do
mm,
more.
mm.
Of course, my dream is to go international. So I
Yeah.
want to go to Singapore.
Yay! Yes, yes, yes. Tell us.
I want to. I want to
Yeah.
travel, and I want to spread the message.
What kind of event was it, and what kind of event you plan to do?
So it was book signing events, but
Yeah.
I want to do like a speaking event. Like
Speech. Yes.
I think you
Yes.
and I would be great to do an event like that. Just
Yes.
a speaking event to talk about your book, my book,
Yeah.
and just
Yeah.
to give people hope from
Yeah.
both aspects of our life. I think that's
Yeah.
important to people to know.
Thank you for mentioning that because, the candle in the wind, it took me 5 years.
Yeah.
That's part one. I actually have part two, but it was so difficult, because like what you say, revisiting it is so tough. I couldn't do that because, even like flipping the book, I just couldn't stop. I mean, I just can't do that. But,
Right.
the book came out because I think a story needs to be told.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that I wanted to commemorate my mother's walk on the earth.
Mm-hmm.
And also my journey out of grief. I can talk about it now because it's 5 years, but can you imagine for like 5 years, you couldn't even talk about it. You couldn't even talk about it.
Right.
You couldn't talk about it. And you're right, because a lot of things is in your mind, you can't unravel,
Mm-hmm.
right? Some people cope, they have that kind of coping mechanism. Everyone is different.
Right.
But some people do not have a coping mechanism.
Right.
That's why they crash, right?
Yes.
They come to the end and they crash. I think what you do is so important. Like, Annette, I want to thank you for your show. I think there's still so much more you can give. Sometimes I feel the more you give, the more the world gives back to you. The more the kind of energy gets bounced back to you, the kind of fuel that the world gives, which makes it so a magnificent kind of cycle. The cycle that we're doing, and with that, your stories and also your book. I would love to do something with you on a talking event on Zoom. We can do it in Singapore, a public event with Singapore,
Yes.
with a workbook, for example, making people
Yes.
go through, in the pandemic, a lot of people are going crazy.
Yeah.
That their husbands killing wives and fathers killing daughters and brothers killing sisters. It does. Some of it make it into the headlines. Some of them don't. Some of them is a small news. But you know what goes on behind that small news? Can imagine their lives.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's why okay. Tell us also about your podcast.
Oh, yes. So my podcast is called The Truths We Hide. And
wow, you've got a lot of gold nuggets there.
It really started from my own, all the stuff that I hid. And so when I started it, I thought it was going to be for military, but I had a lot of people reach out to me and say, do I have to be military? Because I have my story that I want to share. And I said, no, let's do it. So that's what I do is I help all people share their stories of abuse or human trafficking. The stories are absolutely heartbreaking.
God, we got to put it up to the world. And then I must have another season with you.
I know.
Whereby you relate all these stories to this part of the world.
Yes, I mean, I learned from every guest that comes on the show. I just want to cry. I think I've cried on a few of them because I just can't believe the life that they live, but how they overcame it and how they are here now.
And the strength that they are able to give us.
Yes. And I think that's, yes. So
that's
I think
powerful.
I just want to give them a voice. So that's my mission, is to help people use their voice.
I mean, as you are speaking, the goosebumps is like, wow. No, the thing is that being a podcaster like yourself, the truth that we hide, right? The truth we hide. Can you imagine when someone comes onto the show and they tell their story because you give them a voice, but yet you get so much back. Always. It's crazy, right?
Yes. Always.
And that gives us as podcasters, you as an author, as a podcaster, as a mother, as a military wife, as now as a woman entrepreneur, that kind of power that the world gives back to you when you just think that, okay, maybe I'm just doing something small, but the world just like it just keeps on giving.
Yes. Wow. No, I didn't realize that. I didn't realize who was listening, because sometimes when we do these things, we don't realize who's listening, or is anybody going to read. Yeah. And so when you have people reach out to you, it's like, oh my gosh, someone's, and that gives you even more motivation to continue, because they just need to hear it. They need to hear that. So
I do my podcast, in my little room here in Singapore. But you know, I even have a data scientist write to me and to say that I would like to be on your podcast to talk about philosophy of life, because I thought it's going to talk about like AI, right? Artificial intelligence.
Right.
No, I like to talk about life, and I did talk about that. We talked about a lot of things. He became like, I have a series with him, and you know, we don't know who you're reaching out to, and I also have someone from Australia, you know, came onto the show, and then also, I mean, listeners who became your co-host. I mean, I love that. Yeah, I love that. I say, anyone, you have a story. Don't tell me you have no story. No, Vicky, I have nothing to say. No, but people have. They forget that they're living something called life. A wild ride called life.
No, you're so right. And I think it's just I think God gave us that ability to make them realize that they do have something to say. You know, they do have a story to tell. We just need to, we're there to help them to realize that. And I think that's what's really great.
Yeah. And when we think we're helping them, actually, they're helping us so much more.
Right. Exactly. It's just like, it's such a blessing. It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, like knowing you, CJ, Dr. Moby, Jamil Thomas, the whole collaborative effort, you know, the podcast universe is just a very amazing community. To wrap this up, I am so glad to have you, Annette. I hope that this can go on again. Definitely we'll come back to you for the next season. We can talk more on all these things, and I like to pick up and echo your idea about, let's have a kind of a public dialogue about, you know, starting from your book and starting from my book, to help people through that kind of situation. And you're right. Actually, I'm supposed to do a grief and depression mental health event, online event in Singapore with the National Library that I've like put it on the back burner because I'm so busy right now. But then I think you kind of like triggered that. I'll come back to you right away on that. A lot of people are suffering from mental, even they don't say, and because they don't say it. And of course, mental, you don't say it because it's all in your mind. You think that you're crazy, right? So you don't tell people. Yeah. So, you know, Annette, is there anything you would like to wrap up in the next 15 seconds or so to the audience, to the listeners, to the viewers in this part of the world, to America, and to the rest of the world, wherever we are in the podcast universe? Over 30 countries and growing, and definitely on the internet world of YouTube and Facebook.
I just want to say thank you very much for this opportunity. I think it's amazing. And I think what you're doing is fantastic. I'm just grateful. And to everybody, just remember, you know, that it's okay. Anything is possible. Just if that's what's in your heart, then do it. And you'll find people like us who can help you do that.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Annette. Your show is live right now. Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Masterclass, Women's Leadership for Today, not only for women, but for men. And this is the Annette Wittenberger Show, but you know, it's live now, and it's going to be replayed on podcast and also Lifestyle TV USA channel by Dr. Moby. Annette, I want to thank you so much. We've got so much love for you from this part of the world, Singapore, an ally of America. We've got fate tied together in the pandemic. And now you have shared about your children's lives. I think we've got so much more understanding and so much more respect for people at the front line. People at the front line like yourself, veterans, and also people fighting the pandemic now in many parts of the world. Thank you so much, Annette.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. I just want to come back to you. We are still live right now, and I am going to complete this live cast with Annette. a little bit later on. So, but you know what, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to thank you for tuning in to GDM Productions. You can find us on tinyurl.com/talkaboutlife and on Facebook. All right, bye.